Welcome back to the National Citizens Inquiry. We apologize. Actually, the internet has gone down now, I think, 3 times in the last half hour. So please be patient with us. Hopefully things will go okay from here on. Our next witness is Mallory Flank. Mallory, I can see you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
And I can hear you also. I'd like to start by asking you to state your full name for the record, spelling your first and last name.
It's Mallory Flank, Mike Alpha, Lima Lima, Oscar Romeo Yankee, and then Foxtrot Lima Alpha November Kilo.
And Mallory, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, yes.
Now, Mallory, you're here to share about your experience with the vaccine. I'd like to start by asking why you chose to get vaccinated.
I was actually mandated for the vaccine in Alberta. It was required for all healthcare professionals. So in order to work, I had to be vaccinated.
And I'll just back up. I forgot to introduce that. So you were a critical care paramedic deployed overseas. You were also a medical student.
Yes.
So,
yes, I was.
Yeah, so when you say it was mandated, you mean as a healthcare worker, it was mandated for you?
Yes, it was mandated for me.
Okay, so that's why you chose to get vaccinated. Can you tell us when, or I can lead you on that if you want. I know it's May 14th, 2021.
Just over 2 years now, so yeah, it was definitely May 14th, 2021.
So tell us what happened.
So within 10 minutes of getting the vaccine, I had an anaphylactic reaction to the vaccine. I started off with hives, hoarse voice, started coughing. I had some stridor, which is that nice high-pitched squeal that comes out when your throat starts to swell. My tongue was swollen, face was swollen. Thankfully, we had some medication and stuff with us, so we were able to mitigate most of the reaction right away. Following that point, I ended up having more reactions. The following day, I ended up going into the ER utilizing epinephrine.
And I'm just going to slow you down. So the first day, you're having these reactions. What in addition started happening the second day?
The second day, the reaction was worse. So in that sense, we kind of weren't really expecting it to go like that, but the reaction was infinitely worse to the point where I had to use an EpiPen. After that happened, we went to the hospital. Upon getting into the hospital, I was kind of rushed in on that one. I was given more epinephrine, a bunch of antihistamines, some steroids, and then watched for a bit and then sent home.
Okay. So you end up in the hospital that day. So that's May 15th. Now,
yes.
My understanding is basically you were in the hospital every day until you were admitted, like May 15th to May 20th. Can you kind of walk us through those days and tell us what happened?
For sure. So essentially the same thing was happening, except they were just randomly coming on. We weren't really understanding what was going on. On a daily basis, I was ending up having to use EpiPens because, of course, I was sent home with epinephrine from the first time I went to the hospital. So the Sunday, same thing happened again. Ended up back in the hospital. Ended up getting kind of the same role with, the steroids, the antihistamines, more epinephrine, sent home. That happened every single day. And then when we switched up hospitals because we were told to avoid our community hospital because they weren't well equipped for airway issues. So they said if there are any airway issues, try to go past and go to a bigger facility. So that's what we did. And on that one, I think it was 3 EpiPens on the way into the hospital.
So I'm just going to slow you down. Were you prior to being vaccinated? Would you be using EpiPens?
No.
Did you even have EpiPens?
No.
Okay, so the hospital is sending you home with a lot of EpiPens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a prescription for unlimited.
Okay, and just for those that would be watching your testimony that aren't familiar with what an EpiPen is, can you explain to them what an EpiPen is and why it's so important?
For sure. So this is what it looks like. But the EpiPens are set with a specific dose amount of epinephrine. The epinephrine is designed to kind of help take down the swelling. That way that your airway, like if you can't breathe, it should take it away enough that you're able to get some air in. It's not an end-all be-all though. Like I've had to use upwards of 6+. There was one day I think I had 10. So it's equipped to stop reactions, but at the same time, it is a very limited time frame that it does it in.
And
So
I'm just going to slow you down again. Like, if somebody, like we hear about people that are allergic to bees, like where they're going to die if they get, that's what they have to carry with them every day in case they get stung. And if they don't get that in, they're not going to be able to breathe.
Yes, that's exactly it.
You were experiencing this like up to 10 times a day where you wouldn't be able to breathe unless you used an EpiPen.
Yes.
Okay, and I just wanted people to understand how serious what you're going through is, and so I'm sorry, I'll let you carry on, but I think it's important that people to understand this is actually life and death if you don't have an EpiPen.
Yeah, I would have died if I hadn't had an EpiPen with me. Like even now, I have to carry 6 with me at any given time. So it's very important to have around. In that first week, I mean, we ended up bypassing and going to a different facility. The same thing kind of happened there. Same medications given, several rounds of epi, discharged again. Went back the next day actually by ambulance because I had a massive reaction trying to get a prescription for antihistamines that was given to me the previous day. And when we went in there, the poor pharmacist, she was actually on the phone with the GP that was assisting with what was going on with me, and getting orders and then throwing us medication that could be injected. So like injectable Benadryl, several EpiPens, then called EMS, went in by EMS. They gave, I think, 2 rounds of epi in the ambulance. Went back. Once we got to the hospital, another round of epinephrine, more IV antihistamines. And then at that point, I had a scope that was done about 3 hours past being treated. So of course they just saw redness and whatnot in there. But I was supposed to be admitted on that one. I was told by the ER physician, who was the same one as the previous day. Unfortunately, this time when he saw me when I came in, he's like, "Oh, it's you again," and kind of rolled his eyes and then didn't treat the situation as seriously as the previous day, which I don't understand what happened with this change in mentality for it. However, in there again, the nurses were advocating for me. I kind of hung out in there. Reactions happened a couple of times. I was treated for 2 of them, and then another one happened, and they were kind of hemming and hawing about actually doing any treatment. We ended up being treated for it eventually, but again, then discharged afterwards. He changed his mind. So he discharged me again. And then finally, on the Friday, I was admitted to the university hospital.
So that would be May 21st by my count. And so your vaccination was on May 14th. So basically for 7 days, you were having to go to the hospital every single day, and then finally they just admit you.
Yeah. Even my partner injected me with epi in the middle of the night because I didn't wake up to my airway being compromised. The high-pitched squeal from the stridor woke him up.
How long were you in the hospital before you were released?
I was in the hospital for 7 days, 5 of which were in the ICU.
Okay, so tell us about that. I mean, ICU, that means you're on death's door without like a one-on-one nurse.
Yes, so I had initially been put into what they call eye care, which is like an intermediate version of it, where I'm completely monitored, but the nurses aren't one-to-one. But I had so many calls with the medical emergency team because I needed epinephrine and immediate intervention for reactions, that it got to the point where I was too unstable and to be able to kind of sit there in that area, because that team was called, I think, 6 times prior to me being put into the ICU. So they brought me down to the ICU so that I could have that close monitoring. So when a reaction happened, they could be right there. And they had everything available to them instead of being locked up in cabinets. My partner did have to like come and treat me a couple of times. He had medication with him because in IMCU they don't have the stuff immediately available, and because of that, any delay, of course, causes bigger issues. So when like they weren't able to source the medication, they weren't giving me the medication that I required on time, that kind of stuff, it all kind of compounded, and then reactions would start to happen. And then, of course, the Met team would be called, the team would come in, and then they would treat according to what they had or just watch, whichever, because most of the time we had it treated with epi by the time they got there. And then finally, after having to tell one of the physicians exactly what our background was and what my background was, he finally went, "Oh, she's like me, just without the certificate." And this is coming from an ICU physician. And he said, "Okay."
I'm just going to slow you down there for a second. So, what are you reacting to? Because it's your throat that's swelling. Am I right?
Yeah.
What are you reacting to, where you're needing this constant epinephrine?
So we did find out a couple of months later that I do have a severe allergy to the S1 protein. That is what was causing the reactions, and because
and
the
to
mRNA
slow you down,
vaccine,
this protein is in the vaccine, right?
it is, and it develops. It's what is developed by the mRNA vaccine, so that you can create the antibodies to attack it, which means your antibodies also have a component of it. So as long as there's even a tiny version of the S1 protein in my body, I will react to it.
So for 2 weeks, you're basically where you could die at any time, except you're getting these EpiPens, and it's death by suffocation. What was that experience like for you emotionally and mentally?
It's scary. I mean, I've transported really sick patients. I've been a part of people with anaphylactic reactions and that kind of stuff. But I was not ever anticipating to be someone like to experience something like this. To have it happen so frequently on a daily basis is scary. I don't know what's going to happen. Even now, I don't know what's going to happen. When it does happen, you fear for your life. Like, I hate to say this, I've kind of gotten used to it a little bit. It's not as right in your face, but that initial phase is so scary. I didn't think I would ever see my children grow up. Like, I thought the last time that I spoke to them, like prior to going into the ICU, was the last time I would ever see them again. Like, it's a horrible, horrible experience. So incredibly difficult to put into words what it's like to just, I guess, to showcase it would be the equivalent of, in the movies where they, mobsters and stuff like that, they'll put a plastic bag over somebody's face, and then you can see them trying to suck in the air and there's nothing there and they're panicking and scratching at their neck. That's what it's like. Even now, I have to do this to pull my shirt and stuff away from my neck as it swells. Like, you can probably see now, my neck is actually swollen a little bit. But it's very, very scary. And it's scary for people around you that know you, too. Especially when your hands are tied and you can't do anything to help.
Do you mind sharing us discussing the email you sent me earlier today?
Oh, not at all.
Okay, so basically you knew you were going to be testifying, and you basically were communicating that you're having a bad day and you might actually have an attack while you're testifying, which is why you have an EpiPen right there. It's just because otherwise you could die in front of us.
Yeah. So I thought I would give you the heads up just in case. You hear my voice is changing a little bit. The EpiPen, I've got an EpiPen, I've got even IV Benadryl, and I have half bag of fluid that's behind me that's still running.
So what's and I'm sorry, I didn't even notice. So you have an IV bag behind you that's running, so it's dripping into you. What's in the bag?
It's just saline at the moment, but I have drawn up medication like Benadryl, the injectable version, because I have a central line still in.
Okay, can you just show us that again for the camera? So this is normal for you, right? Is to have an IV line into your arm so that you can inject Benadryl directly into your system rather than have to ingest it because your throat will be constricting.
Yes, and to provide fluids and whatnot. After a reaction, most often I'm not able to eat or digest stuff, and the more reactions that happen, the worse that gets. So I can't break down pill capsules. I drink a lot of the medication. The IV stuff works infinitely faster as well because I don't have time with some of them where I've gone unconscious in less than 30 seconds. Even the other day, somebody was smoking outside and the door was partially open and the smoke came in. I ran to the door to close it, managed to close the door, and then just collapsed down because I was so dizzy. My dog brought me an EpiPen and helped me with its administration. So it is dangerous. Like, it's scary and dangerous, and little things set it off. So it's difficult to live with. I'm thankful for having the central line in right now because it's what is saving my life when it comes to having to administer medication quickly.
Yeah, and I just want people to understand it has been a full 2 years since your single shot.
Yes. 2 years. Now it caused autoimmune disorders. So essentially it's a secondary mast cell activation syndrome where my body attacks itself. It also causes me to be reactive to pretty much everything in my environment. So they call it being allergic to life. Prior to this, I had 3 allergies to medications.
Right, okay.
Now,
So you had, when you say 3 allergies, you mean you were allergic to 3 drugs?
yes.
So you weren't allergic to cats or dogs or pollen or anything like that. You were able to go out and do whatever you wanted.
Yes.
Until
Yep.
May 14th, 2021.
Yes.
And then you haven't had a single day off.
That single day, and now every single day, I have reactions. It doesn't stop. I'm on a lot of high-dose antihistamines and medications to try to suppress my the mast cell response. Lots of supplements, specialized diet. I get exercise-induced anaphylaxis, so I have to be careful. My heart rate can't go above 110, otherwise it causes a reaction. Stress will cause it. Environmental stuff, like the smoke right now, is predominantly what the issue is. And even yesterday, the smoke in general has been pretty bad, but it causes, again, reactions that require epinephrine and Benadryl. And
I'll just slow you down. So because you live in Alberta, and people here in Ottawa and people online may not understand that there are forest fires happening in Alberta, and so there's smoke in the city you live in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Almost the whole province is on fire. Like, we're well coated in smoke and ash across the province. So it's pretty bad here at this point. I think we're on very severe is the risk level for us. It's a 10 plus.
Okay.
So
now you've told us that you've got mast cell activation syndrome, which is basically makes you allergic to life. Mm-hmm. I wanted to just, before we go on, is you had an episode where you actually became allergic to your own hair. Yes. Yeah. Can you tell us about that? And then I'm going to pull up some photos from your website.
For sure. So I think it was August 2021, I had been progressively becoming more allergic to stuff as we went along. So I would all of a sudden have reactions to random things that I had never been allergic to ever in my life. And then we at one point, like, something weird was going on, but I was developing like sores and stuff on my head. around my hair follicle, and it turned out that the mast cells were actually attacking my hair follicle. So I still have some bald spots and whatnot from it, but because of that, my hair would fall out. So we just kind of went to the point where we're like, well, we'll just shave your head and see what happens, which helped exponentially because even my hair touching my neck or my face would cause swelling in that area. So it was completely out of the blue. Now I use shampoo that has Benadryl in it to kind of mitigate that aspect. But it was, again, something that we didn't even consider and something that's so odd, right? But it's the epitome of your body attacking itself.
Okay, I'm going to pull up some pictures. And so, David, if you want to put the exhibit up that I have on the computer at the lawyer's table up. So now this is, you have a website because you want to share your story with people. And we've entered your web page as Exhibit OT12. And can you just explain to us these two pictures here, and then I'll scroll down to the next two pictures.
For sure. So the first picture is my daughter and I. This is before getting the vaccine, so it is in early 2021. And the following picture is partially of a reaction. So that's some of the swelling that's from a reaction, and it is after my head was shaved. From the looks of the back, I was in the hospital at that time. So that is a photo of me in the hospital having a reaction with my face swelling up completely.
Okay.
And in this time frame, my weight now fluctuates, can fluctuate up to 30 pounds in 24 hours from just swelling alone. So this is, again, one of those incidents that I had been put on steroids as well, so it didn't help. This actually makes that part infinitely worse. So there's, yes, just a lot of swelling.
Okay, so I'm going to scroll down, and I'm thankful that you had sense of humor, even doing the Dr. Evil pose.
I had to.
So share with us these two pictures. So
the first one is a picture towards the end of my time frame when I was working overseas. So that is late 2020.
And that's when you're working basically as an emergency paramedic overseas.
Yes. Yeah.
A critical care paramedic.
Yes. And then the next picture is actually 2 days after we had shaved my head when all the swelling had gone down out of my face. So we had taken a picture then just to have a before and after of what had happened. We were joking around because, it's weird having a shaved head when you've never had one before.
Right, and so so for the swelling, so I'll just scroll up so people can compare. So everyone just have a look at the Dr. Evil shot, and again, it's important to have a sense of humor. So you see the difference there in swelling. So that's why you put those pictures on your website, is you wanted us to understand, or just anyone to understand what you were experiencing. So David, you can take that down, and so we can see Mallory again. So Mallory, you told us about mast cell activation syndrome. My understanding is you also have POTS. And can you tell us about that and what that stands for?
For sure. So POTS is, again, an autoimmune disorder. It is a disorder where your nervous system, its automatic functions don't function as well. And in my sense, what it does is, so it's postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So postural meaning the changes in position make my heart rate go extremely high. And so if I go from laying down to sitting or standing, my heart rate could go, say, from 50 to 130. The blood doesn't return as easily back to my heart to be able to get to my brain. So then, of course, it causes a lot of dizziness. You get a lot of kind of pressure in your head. You can, sometimes I've passed out from it. You get a tinnitus sound afterwards. So you get that high pitched whistle for quite a while in your ears. It can cause extreme pain in your head with that pressure. And And then finally, if I were to sit down or return to the previous position, it would go away within about 30 seconds. But again, each time I have to get up, I now have to get into a position and wait in that position in order to be able to get up into another position. So if I'm laying in bed, I have to sit up and wait. And then I have to stand up and wait. And then I can go and walk around. So it's very frustrating, but.
Okay. I want to now talk about your interaction with the Alberta healthcare system, because my understanding is for the first time in your life you got calls from AHS, which stands for Alberta Health Services. They never call you for any other purpose, but they call you for the purpose of your vaccination. And can you tell us about those calls? And then I also want you to tell us about doctors filling out reports and whether you found those reports to be veracious.
Okay. So the calls that I got originally the first two were from a nurse who was calling in regards to the vaccine reaction. So she got all the information down. She found out that I was still having reactions on a daily basis and that we were kind of trying to find help to deal with it. She called a second time just to see if I was still having reactions and then to see if anything else had progressed. So she was lovely. She did say that the immunologist would potentially call if they thought it was like an important aspect for them to make contact on. The immunologist did call several months later, and at the time I was in really bad condition. I was having multiple reactions per day. Even when she called, I had just had a reaction, so I was exhausted in speaking with her. And on that phone call, as I was speaking, she'd be like, and then I would get interrupted, and she would say, well, one of the comments was, there was a woman in ICU that had a reaction to the first shot, but she received her second shot successfully, which to me at that time that didn't really pertain to the situation. Also, everybody's different. Chances are that woman and I do not have the same physiology or had the same response. We don't know why she was in ICU, the whole 9 yards.
Right. So, but just to be clear, she actually told you to get the second shot, didn't she?
She did, yeah. So she told me that I needed to get the second shot. She wanted me to schedule a second shot with her right there. She said, well, if you are that so scared about this, I can have the pharmacist split the dose in half, and I can stand there and watch while they give it.
So I just want to make sure that I understand what you're telling us. So you've basically become completely disabled, where you're only alive on a daily basis because you're jabbing EpiPens into yourself. And the immunologist is telling you to go and get a second shot.
Yes.
Had this immunologist ever seen you as a patient?
No.
Just phoning from AHS and telling you to get a second shot?
Yes. And then she phoned my GP at the time as well.
To tell your GP to tell you to get a second shot?
Yeah.
Now, my understanding is you have concerns about some of the reports the doctors have written. Can you share with us that?
Yes. So when I was admitted into the hospital for a month, majority of the time the physicians wouldn't be around when reactions happened. However, the reports that went in said that, oh yeah, she had all these reactions. We didn't see anything happen on our full assessment. So we think that, we don't know exactly what's going on, and she's administering Epi 3 times a day all of the time. She's administering Benadryl all of the time, so we think that she has an addiction to Benadryl. We have concerns that this is, like psychiatric in nature, and essentially it was a lot of, we saw nothing happen. Now, when you look at the nurses' notes document all of the swelling and and documents that they were unable to get a hold of the physicians. It was documented that they were not able to get medication orders because the doctors refused to give them. There were times that it was documented that I didn't have a reaction, and yet because medication was withheld for so long for the reaction, I was out like vomiting everywhere in the room, not able to breathe, and just like everything's coming out. It was ridiculous, completely swollen, my eyes swollen shut. So there's the reports that went, like those are the progress notes that the physicians do. And those are the notes that go to the specialists. Those were sent to the specialists. They didn't include the fact that psychiatric evaluations had been done, and I had been completely told that, or we had been told that everything was fine, that the reactions were actually happening, that they couldn't have been induced in any other manner. Like, it's not psychiatric in nature. So it was really frustrating to see that they had actually changed everything, hadn't assessed me. None of the physicians actually did a full assessment, barring one. One out of the 9 did a head-to-toe assessment.
Okay.
The others, even if they came up to talk to me, and they would document that they did a full assessment and what they found, but there was no assessment actually completed.
And I'm just going to, we're getting a little short on time, but I don't want you I want a full answer on this next question, and then I'm going to lead you on some financial stuff. But I want you to take your time on explaining the impact on your children and on you, because it's affected your ability to care for them, and I want you to share that with us.
Yes. So my daughter's like starting off, right? We didn't really know what was going on. I unfortunately was unable to look after them because of how sick I was. So I lost a lot of parenting time. Some of the reactions happened in front of my kids. One was caused because my daughters had cats at the time, and I all of a sudden was deathly allergic to cats. And her jacket was in the bathroom, and I had gone into the washroom for maybe 10 seconds and had a massive reaction, came out, and I was having a hard time breathing. I was turning gray. My lips were blue, and my daughters were right there in front of me. So my partner, of course, explained what was going on. He put in an IV and treated me. He asked them to go in the other room, and then he went and he spoke to them afterwards. We've had to try to normalize what's going on with me because of the number of times I've had reactions. So they're very well versed now with EpiPens and stuff like that. And that's just, general knowledge wise, it's wonderful, but I have been kind of pushed on by the court system and by my ex, in the sense that me being the way that I am, they don't want to deem it as being normal. That if I have to treat something, that the kids can't ever see anything that's happening. I can't show them when I'm sick. I can't show them that I'm having a reaction, all because it shouldn't ever be normalized that this is happening. These are permanent issues.
I just want to stop. So you're in family court, and the family court's basically telling you you can't live the life that you have now been dealt in front of your kids.
And if I have to go away for treatment, if it's for an extended period of time, I would have to reapply for things like parenting and whatnot when I come back. There's I've lost so much time with them. The more I react, the sicker I get, and then I can't look after them. It's horrible to know that they're so close, yet I can't be with them because I'm too sick to be able to facilitate what they need.
Just hang on a second. We've lost sound, so just hang on a second. So, can you talk again? I think we've got it back. No, yeah, there we go. Yeah, sorry.
Even this week, I have had to had to give up parenting time because of the smoke, and I can't leave the house. So I can't facilitate anything for them. If people come in and out, it brings smoke into the house, and then I have anaphylactic reactions. So it's a very difficult balance. My daughters want like to bring friends over, and they love animals and whatnot. Of course, we have parameters in place, and for safety purposes, we're able to mitigate a lot of the stuff so that they have some normalcy for everything. But again, at the same time, things like wildfires and stuff like that, things that I can't predict, I end up losing parenting time because of it. Because I can't facilitate being a parent. I miss that time. I can't advocate for what they need. And then it goes into the court system as, you know, she's too sick to do this and do that. Is she well enough to make decisions? Is she well enough to actually be a parent? And it's hard to hear that because this isn't something that I, you know, asked for to begin with. Like nobody would ask for something like that. But it came off of me doing what I thought was right. At the time, I mandated so that I could facilitate, you know, bringing in income to support our family. And then all of this stuff happening and me not being able to see my daughters, having to go and stay with my parents in a different province, having to seek out of province care. Again, time frame away from my kids. And it's like my partner has lost jobs. My parents have had difficulty with this as well. And then to see what happens on top of that, like my daughters saw me almost die a couple of times. They're 11 and 13. So they were 9 and 11 at the time that this started. And that's not something a kid should ever have to see. They should never have to see their parent go through something like that in front of them over and over again. And it's like, at that time, of course, we didn't have control over it, so the reactions were much worse, and we couldn't anticipate when they were coming. Now it's easier and it's trackable, but to have them see that and have to deal with that and not know, like when I talk to them on the phone, they can see when a reaction's happening, or if I'm not feeling well, have them worried because they don't know if they get to see me again. Even in the hospital, there was one really bad reaction that wasn't treated properly to begin with, and I thought that was the last one that I was going to have. I thought that the conversation I had with them 3 days prior to that was the last one I would ever have.
Okay.
It's horrible.
I'm just going to rush through the financial stuff just so that it makes it into the record. But, you know, you had been employed by the U.S. government in casualty evacuations for special evacuations medical team, basically, you know, war zone stuff. Mm-hmm. And you were also a medical student, and because of this, you can't work and you couldn't be a medical student. Your parents have basically used up an enormous amount of their savings to help you out. You've paid over $200,000 out of pocket for treatments, and you're still extremely sick, and it's really too expensive for you to live on the small disability pension that you're now on. So this has just been a financial disaster for you and your family.
Yes, absolutely. It's destroyed everything. Like we've lost all of that we have. We used all of my pension that I had built for years, used all of that to pay for medical. We've, like you said, my parents' retirement fund, again, used all of that for medical. We've had to, I still have to pay out of pocket for stuff that's, like I need to see a specialist in the States. That, again, comes out of pocket. Nothing's really been covered, only recently, so it's only been a few weeks that I was actually approved for the provincial disability. then this is 2 years later. And it's off of course, the diagnosis overarching being post-vaccine reaction syndrome. And this, like, how do you expect to function? My costs for medication alone, we're sitting over $8,000 a month. Like, now, of course, a lot of it is covered. It's not all covered, but I require specialized purification systems, specialized water treatment systems. All of the stuff that can be used in the house for cleaning, that stuff has to be specially ordered. When it comes to clothing, shampoo, conditioner, that kind of stuff, personal care items, all has to be specially ordered. There's nothing in our life that I can use that is commercial. And we've tried and tried over and over again to be able to find ways around it that were cheaper, easier, that kind of stuff. And we can't.
And Mallory, I'm just going to, for time, I'm just going to have to cut that short. And I'm going to ask the commissioners if they have any questions for you. And they do.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Flank. Thank you very much for sharing with us your very touching horror story with a touch of humor. I mean, I appreciate that you still struggle to keep up with that. So my first question is, did I understood well from your testimony that they were asking you to get a second shot? Does that imply that they didn't appreciate the seriousness of the side effect from the first shot? Did they acknowledge it at all?
There was no acknowledgement whatsoever on what I said and what was documented for what was going on. It was just a blatant, you could hear her kind of writing down a few things. And then, okay, so when you get so we're going to schedule your second shot. And there was no like ask or no follow-up of, hey, maybe we need to get you in to see her, whoever, as an immunologist, to kind of nail down what was going on, or go to one of the adverse vaccine reaction clinics. There was none of that. After that conversation with her, my report was removed from the provincial system, and so nobody can find it anymore. No physicians have been able to access it since that point. It was like I didn't exist. So the reaction didn't exist. Moderna didn't find out actually until a couple of months ago when I contacted them. So it was a blatant, you're getting the second shot. And any way to get it done was how it was going to happen.
So does that follow that the healthcare system will never compensate for vaccine injury in your case?
I'm not sure. I think, vaccine reactions happen all the time. They've happened with every vaccine. We should have been learning from this one, not just blockading what was going on with it. There was a huge stigma attached to it. There still is. It's not as bad as it was before, but like during that time frame, as soon as anyone found out that this came from the vaccine, I wouldn't get treated, or I would be treated completely differently. And it became really frustrating. And the fact that we couldn't actually get proper treatment was also a big component of it. So it's has, I guess, assisted in making me permanently like this. But the Alberta government, of course, is who approves the disability stuff. So and when my application went into AISH, which is the disability component, it went in as post-vaccine reaction syndrome, and that is what I was approved on. So I think the acceptance is there from that side of things, but it'll be a matter of still working through, and it's practitioner dependent, so it's a little bit difficult. It's hit or miss if I end up going into the hospital. But now I carry a wad of paperwork and assigned protocol and stuff like that, so I'm treated properly versus having to explain everything over and over again and then getting the dodgy, maybe we'll get psyched down and we'll get them to talk to her first and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know if it'll change anybody's mind. I'm hoping the province takes it into consideration as to what's going on, that there are a lot of people that have had issues. So that recognition, I'm hoping will come fully, like come full loop, but it is up to those who are in charge and those who want to encompass and learn. But you can't learn unless you accept and acknowledge. So
what's the prognostic for your current situation? Is there any hope that this will improve over time with any specific treatment, or is it something that is completely, for the time being, not well understood?
Right now, they're saying it's not well understood because I have a kind of an off variant of mast cell. It's a very multi-level immune response, so they don't really know what's going to happen. They do know, like, now that it's been like this for 2 years, we haven't really seen improvement unless I can live completely free of any type of allergen or trigger and like not exacerbated in any way. The symptoms can kind of resolve. I still have reactions, but they don't escalate as quickly. But then if I'm exposed over and over again, it starts getting back to the way it was right at the beginning. So it's very hit or miss right now. There are treatments. If I had actually been treated in hospital properly in the first month, I would have been completely fine. This wouldn't have escalated to the point that it is right now and become permanent. There are treatments that will suppress my immune system. I still haven't been able to get access to them because no one will take my case. So it's a little hard when you can't get someone who's actually willing to look at the fact that it did come from the vaccine and that it is a huge problem and that there are like tons and tons of symptoms and it's dangerous. We're still waiting on that fact to be able to access the proper testing and the treatment to go with it. With that treatment, it could potentially allow me to come off of some of the medications, live a little bit more normally. I still have to be well aware of the allergens and triggers and still have a lot of safety mechanisms in place, but it could have like a better effect for me. Outside of that, there isn't anything else. I will be like this for the rest of my life. So and we don't know how long that actually is.
I'm wondering when you took the decision to get vaccinated because of your work and that you didn't want to lose, but you had already allergy condition before the vaccination. So were you specifically warned that under those conditions you might experience more side effect because of your previous condition?
No, not at all. There was no warning of it. We did a ton of research on the vaccines. The reason I used Moderna was because Pfizer had couldn't guarantee that there wasn't penicillin or sulfonamides in their vaccine, and I had allergies to both of those. So we stepped away from that one and utilized Moderna. But not once was anything ever said that would cause any extra reactivity. We did find a study afterwards that showcased people with those types of allergies, especially female, had a higher incidence of severe reactions to the vaccine, which would have been nice to know ahead of time. But again, it was a small group of individuals off of one of the primary studies, but nobody said anything here. It was actually in the UK, it was part of their algorithm. Where it was one of those, you need to see somebody before you get it. Here it was just get vaccinated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Mallory, there being no further questions, on behalf of the National Citizens Inquiry, I sincerely thank you for coming and sharing your story today. It's been very valuable.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.